Hi, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. As others join, they can jump on. Feel free to use the chat box if you have questions. And I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this works out. Give me 1 second. All right. Again, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this training. We'll introduce ourselves really quick. I am Erin Wasserberger, Grant Manager for the Juvenile Programs Interventions Division. I will go over the program requirements, and then Jesse will cover financial requirements later. When you do put things in the chat box, if you can make sure it says all panelists will all be able to see it. And also, if there's more than one person sharing a computer, like if you joined with a coworker, can you please make sure and let us know that everybody who's in attendance in your office, so that we can make sure we mark down everybody who's here. We'll also be recording this for those who are unable to attend, so that can be made available if you want to rewatch it again yourself. All right, sorry, I clicked and it didn't move forward. On the agenda today, program overview, information about programs, grant award and conditions, the required reporting. Program management, we'll talk about requirements and due dates, compliance and change requests, and then the financial management portion will go over the requirements, responsibilities, and use of state funds. All right, what does grant management require? More specifically, what does this look like for the Juvenile Programs and Interventions Division? All right, so being the expert, this is about knowing all the aspects of your program, the needs of those you are serving and those you don't serve but need the services, knowing your project inside and out, how the community works together. We are here for you to support you in your programs. Ask us questions. We are happy to answer those for you. Understanding how you are using the funds and putting them to the services to improve the youth lives, the lives of the families, your community members overall. This will help you build your program capacity. Meeting deadlines. Managing a grant means that you are meeting these deadlines. From the minute you get the request for application, the RFA, those deadlines are listed. There's a deadline for applying for the grant. There's deadlines throughout the grant for returning potential contingencies or signatures that are needed. So the first thing you would look at are, do you qualify? How much money will you get? When is it due? All the paperwork and requests dealing with the grant have a deadline. Like I just said, from the grant to the signatures to the potential contingencies. Try to stay ahead of the deadlines, putting them on calendars, writing yourself notes, whatever you need to do so that you don't have to ask us if you are past due on anything. All right, documentation is key. Keeping data records, financial records, and information for program monitoring helps us help you when you have those questions. Outcomes, determining what you are doing in your community works. Is this a good investment of the money? Is it making a difference in the lives of the youth and families you are serving? Is it something that is measurable? For this grant, the Juvenile Justice Institute will be working with communities to measure effective outcomes by using the data that's entered into the juvenile case management system, which we will talk about in more detail later. All right, accountability. You're signing a contract, so that's a legally binding relationship between us and you. Just like any relationship, we need to be able to communicate effectively, be honest, be trustworthy, be responsible for doing our own parts, and let each other know when we need help or when something's not working out. There are rules to follow. Try your best to meet the deadlines for each grant program. If you can foresee that you're going to need an extension, let us know in advance the situation that's requiring the extension and how long of an extension you think you'll need. Things do come up unforeseen. Again, just reach out and let us know as soon as you can. If you do wind up making a mistake somewhere, just come forward, talk to us. Don't try to hide it. We'll work with you. We understand there's a lot of demands for grant management, and we would rather you come to us sooner to resolve it before it becomes harder to fix down the road. All right. Everything you need to know about managing this grant is in the Juvenile Programs and Interventions Guidebook. You can find that on our website. The statutes that govern this grant are Nebraska Revised Statutes 43-2404.01 and .02. You can find those on the legislature's website. All the requirements for this are listed in those statutes. You can find information on eligibility and the grant requirements in the grant application instructions and the grant award and special conditions. Again, on our website. The Crime Commission's website is ncc.nebraska.gov. There's a grant apps, the grant applications page where you can find the application and instructions. And then if you go to the Juvenile Programs and Interventions page, that's where you can find the guidebook and then also the rules and regs, as well as other handouts that will come up later. The Juvenile Programs and Interventions Program and Financial Guidebook, we were just talking about, this is what it looks like when you find it. It was just updated last month, so it is the most current information out there. All right. This training is geared towards the management of the grant after it's been awarded to make sure that grantee and subgrantees remain in compliance with grant rules. When the grant has been approved and all contingencies have been met, the county or tribe or agency will receive the grant awards and special conditions. So you'll want to make sure when you receive your special conditions and grant award that everything is correct in here. Make sure the grantee, subgrantee is correct, the grant number, the budget, the grant period, and then make sure all of the signatures that are needed are on there. The signatures needed are the grantee, subgrantee, lead contact, the financial lead, and any authorized official that's listed. Each person who signs is responsible for making sure that the grantee is in compliance with the program. Please keep a copy of your grant award and special conditions to reference and for monitoring purposes. All right, I know this one is a little hard to read. This is the grant award, what it looks like, the special conditions. There's a lot of information in here. You should have received one with your grant. Again, it's very important that you look through this and make sure everything is correct. When we say grantee, that would be the lead county, tribe, or agency who is financially responsible for the grant award. For those of you who are in multi-county groups, the lead county, that's what we mean by lead county. So if there's going to be one county who is writing the grant and in charge of the financial piece and all that, that would be the lead county. If there's a single county, and you are the lead county. The grant number will change from year to year. Make sure you're using the grant number on your grant award on any correspondence with us, so that we are all looking at the same grant. Make sure our figures align with yours. You are required to meet match listed on the grant award, and if monitored, you will be responsible for providing documentation to that. And then again, make sure you have all of the signatures. I would point out that in the special conditions, and you can see it on the screen, we do still have the quarterly reporting dates listed, and we have changed that since the grants were awarded. That decision came after everybody was sent their grant awards. We'll talk about that here shortly. But that part of the grant award has changed. So I know somebody has already asked a question on that, but when we talk about reporting here shortly, follow what we're telling you in the training today. All right, special conditions. These are standard requirements that apply to every county, tribe, agency, entity, and program receiving funding. Every year, they are reviewed and revised according to statute and updates within the Crime Commission. Make sure you read through these standards carefully and thoroughly to make sure you are complying with the requirements of the program. The special conditions are included with the grant award contract that was emailed to you after your contingencies were reviewed and approved. Make sure you obtain appropriate signatures on this as well. And again, make a copy for your records, since these are the requirements that you are bound to follow. If you have any questions, please ask us, and then return the original signed special conditions with your grant award within 30 days of the date of the memorandum. All right. I will pause for a second to see if there are any questions on what we just covered. Maybe I have lost the chat box. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I will move along. All right. Required reporting under the rules and regulations, that's what Title 75, Chapter 1, Section 12 is. There's two parts of reporting requirements: program reporting and financial reporting. Program reporting is, sorry, let me animate through there. Program reporting is individual youth data in the JCMS and the annual grant activity report. Financial reporting is expenses and payment requests. These reporting requirements that are listed in Section 12 of Rules and Regulations are also listed in the guidebook and in the special conditions. There are currently 2 reports that you submit to be in compliance with the community-based juvenile services aid program. You're reporting youth data into the JCMS and submitting the annual grant activity report to the Crime Commission. Oops, sorry about that. And then The second is reporting expenses and payment requests in AmpliFund. So on the program management side of that, so JCMS, the Juvenile Case Management System, is where all individual level data of youth participating in programs that are funded by the grant is entered. Those of you who have used the JCMS know that it requires an individual certificate assigned specifically to agencies by program type in order to get into the JCMS. That's because we have it housed within the Nebraska Criminal Justice Information System, or NCJIS, and the certificates are how NCJIS remains secure. At the beginning of the project period, we usually try to get it done around April and May. We send out a registration. It's a survey, usually through Qualtrics. And this is where you would register the programs that are receiving funding. Based on what you register, certificates are created or continued if it's a continuing program for the JCMS. We do ask that each individual who is entering this youth data have their own certificate. You can have multiple certificates per agency or per program. It just, having each user have their own certificate helps us track who is entering what information. The required variables. Each program type for individual youth data has required variables that are needed in order to effectively evaluate the program that is required in the Nebraska statute. This document is also found on our website under the Juvenile Programs and Interventions. There's any updates to the required variables document will be communicated out to project leads to provide to programs, as well as updated information posted on our website. The annual grant activity report. This is new for this year. You guys are doing one currently. It's due August 12th, but in place of the quarterly narratives, you are required to complete and submit an annual grant activity report at the end of the grant cycle. This will be due 45 days after the closeout of the project period. The lead contact on the grant is responsible for ensuring all the narratives are completed for each program and will submit the narrative to the Crime Commission. We will provide JCMS data. Moving forward, it'll probably be in mid-July to complete this report. You can find this template on the Crime Commission's website. The Juvenile Justice Institute has training guides and videos for data entry of individual youth data on their website. Their website is jjinebraska.org, and then this program's home part that's here at the end will take you to the program's homepage. Has information that is that pertains to all the different program types, and then from the program's homepage you can also click on specific program types that will get you more specific information related to those program type screens. And then finally, the last one on here, the missing data reports. 1 month following what would have been the quarterly reporting deadline, so it'll be once a quarter. The Crime Commission will release a missing data report for each program indicating which required variables are missing for discharged cases from the previous 4 quarters. You will receive these in an email through Kevin Dahlman through a share file link. So you'll have to go to the share file site and extract your own reports. These are being offered as a resource for updating data and are not required to be utilized. However, if there's a significant number of missing variables at the end of a fiscal year, or the Juvenile Justice Institute is having issues with completing an evaluation because of lack of program data, then the grantee and or subgrantee will be considered out of compliance and may become ineligible for future funding. So while the missing data reports are no longer a requirement, we do still strongly recommend that you utilize them to make sure your required variables are entered. All right. The program reporting due dates, I just touched on this. The annual report is due no more than 45 days after the grant ends. Note that if that day falls on a holiday, Saturday or Sunday, they are due the prior working day. So that is like this year, that is why it is August 12th. Individual level data should continually be entered into the JCMS and updated as needed. While we are not following up each quarter on the data, we do still recommend that project leads continue to monitor data entry on a regular basis, so that there's not one missing data when it is time for evaluations, but also if everybody gets in at the same point in time to upload new data, the system does become overwhelmed and may not work correctly. So if you are non-compliant, if you are out of compliance with any state or federal law, guidelines or requirements or conditions stated in grant award packet, there could be suspension or termination of funds. The grantee will have 10 working days to respond with a plan to correct any program deficiencies. If you do not respond to correct the deficiencies in reporting requirements, then we will move towards termination of the award. Again, if you're having issues with something, come to us early on so that we can help you address the issues so that we don't get to this point where we are sending you the email that you are no longer in compliance. All right. Types of change requests. A project change request is when you propose changing the original grant award contract. There's 4 types of change requests listed. They all need prior approval. So we're going to look at some of those. And if you have any questions on these, let us know. So there's a project change request. If you are looking at adding a program or adding additional personnel for a program, maybe stopping a program. I think those are some of the more common ones that we see. You would need to fill out this form found on our website and submit that to us. You can email it to me. If there's a budget change that goes with that, there's a separate budget change form, which we'll get to here in a minute. The project change form does have a narrative to fill out. I know it's kind of hard to see on this screen, but this is where you're going to let us know what the change is, why it's necessary. And then some of the questions that are similar to when you're applying, who's your target population? How is this going to impact your community? And what changes do you expect to see from this change? What changes in the community do you expect to see from this change in the grant? Sorry, I used change too many times there. If you have a project personnel change form, that's a separate form on our website. So this would be for the lead project contact, secondary project contact, financial or authorized official. And we need to update our form. But fill all this out and you can send that to me as well. And then here's the budget change form. This is an Excel sheet found on our website. Once everything has been approved and you have your change request filled out and your budget revision filled out, you can send the budget change request to Jesse. I don't know, Jesse, if you had anything else you wanted to add on the budget change request side.
No, I don't think so. If just like what Erin said, if you have any questions, if you get stopped on anything, just pause and reach out and I can walk you through it. I always think it's pretty self-explanatory, but then again, I wrote it. So it seems like that to me, whereas I look at it all the time. You may only look at it once in a grant year. So don't get frustrated. Just reach out with any questions you have. I guess that's all I would add.
All right, again, just briefly, the program table narrative, budget change, email those to me. We'll review them, and then you can email the budget change request to Jesse. Grant monitoring. You are required to track and retain a copy of your application, the grant award and special conditions that are sent out, any forms that have been sent out, filled out and signed, correspondence, copies of contracts, bills and invoices, and quarterly activity monitors. So during a grant monitor, we would need to look at this information. Doing program monitors, I've reached out to some of you already, but I am trying very hard to meet with all programs that are funded this fiscal year. I enjoy having a face to put with the name, but also just to get some more information about the programs, information that maybe can't be put in the grant application so that we know more about the program and the youth that they're serving and the communities that you are all working in. So for those program monitors, we're trying to do them in person. So tours of the facility, introduction of staff, program plans, data narrative reports, and memo to file. Just keep those in mind as we do our program monitors. All right, are there any questions about anything that I went over? I know there was a lot in there, kind of covered it all. All right, I don't see any questions popping up in the chat, so we will take a quick 10-minute break. So come back around 10:40 and we'll go into the financial piece.
All right, I think that was 10 minutes. Welcome back. We'll get started with the financial part. So what does financial management mean? It is the proper stewardship of state resources, an essential responsibility of the award recipients and subrecipients. You must ensure that state funding and resources are used efficiently and effectively to achieve desired objectives. You should have management processes and controls in place that reasonably ensure all of the following. That your funded programs achieve their intended results, that resources are used in a manner consistent with the state agency's mission, that programs and resources are protected from waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement, and that laws and regulations are followed. This requires an adequate accounting system. An adequate accounting system allows you to maintain documentation to support all receipts, expenditures, and obligations of grant funds. An adequate accounting system collects and reports financial data for planning, controlling, measuring, and evaluating direct costs. An adequate accounting system for a grantee must be able to accommodate a fund and account structure to separately track receipts, itemized expenditures, assets, and liabilities for awards, programs, and contractors. The adequacy of financial management system may be reviewed as part of the application process or at any time subsequent to the grant award. An adequate accounting system can be used to generate reports required by grant award and state regulations. And your system must support all of the following. The financial reporting is accurate, current, complete, compliant with all reporting requirements for your grant award. If you are a sub-grantee of a grantee, then reasonable procedures to ensure the receipt of reports on grantees' cash balances and cash disbursements is sufficient to enable them to prepare and complete accurate cash transaction reports to the Nebraska Crime Commission monthly. And that the account for award funds are separate, no commingling, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And so this should all include internal control, budget control, allowable cost, the source documentation, and the monitoring support. Accounting procedures should create a clear audit trail for each source of funding, and it must be maintained. A grantee, as a grantee, you must have a financial management system in place that is able to record and report on the receipt, obligation, and expenditure of the grant funds. The accounting system must track the receipt, obligation, and expenditure of all funds by funding source. Again, this goes back to commingling, which we'll cover here in just a second. General ledgers with detailed expenses for the agency broken down by grant funding source and by year must be maintained throughout the entire grant period and be available for audit purposes. So commingling of funds. You must account for each award separately. Grantees and subgrantees are prohibited from commingling funds on either a program by program or project by project basis. Funds specifically budgeted and or received for one project may not be used to support another. And if your general ledger accounting system cannot comply with this requirement, you should establish a system to adequately track funds according to each budget category. So for the use of state grant funds, the project period is important. That is for our grants, July 1st through June 31st. So when you're reporting expenses, no cost before or after these dates can be reported for that grant cycle. So as we just switched from the 22 grant to the 23 grant, any expenditures that are reported prior to June 30th need to be reported in the 2022 grant. And anything that was expended after July 1st would need to be reported in the 2023 grant. Unallowable costs and activities may include office space, overtime costs, including bonuses, office supplies, indirect organizational costs, construction costs, lobbying, food and or beverage for meetings. This does not include food or beverage for juveniles, just for the adults hosting the meetings, and drug testing supplies. Indirect organizational costs are costs of the organization that are not readily assignable to a particular project, but are necessary to the operation of the organization and the performance of the project. So some examples of costs usually treated as indirect include those incurred for facility operation, maintenance, depreciation, and administrative salaries. So for the procurement policies, all contracts supported with grant funds and equipment purchases must go through a procurement process. What that process entails depends on the agency that writes the contract. State agencies, which include purchases $2,000 and over, must follow the procurement process that is governed by DAS. It's on the DAS website and has two manuals, one covering supplies and the other covering goods and commodities. For counties, this is purchases $5,000 and over. They must follow the Nebraska state statute. And all other agencies, like nonprofits, must follow their own written procurement process. If there is no written procurement process, then it reverts back to the issuing agency's procurement process. Payment requests in AmpliFund. So this is new to everyone this year, and I know we're all kind of still getting acclimated to it. The reporting requirements are the same, just the process has changed. So all grants are managed in the AmpliFund system now. Training on AmpliFund is provided online by the AmpliFund team, as well as online training videos created by the AmpliFund team that are posted on our website that Erin told you about earlier. Expenses are to be entered timely. Expenditures should be reported within 2 months from the month of the expense. Occasionally, this will be longer. Things may have to go through insurance or Medicaid, and sometimes that takes a while for it to be expensed, and that's fine. But as timely as possible, I should say. And this must include the documentation as determined by the operational assessment tool, which we'll get to here in a minute. Payment requests are due monthly by the 30th. I say the 30th, but it's really just the end of the month. So if the month has 28 days, it's the 28th. If it has 31 days, it's the 31st or 30th, depending on what month it is. Final payments for the project period budget year is within 45 days at the end of the period. And like Erin said, this year it's on the 12th, because if that 45 days falls on a weekend or holiday, then it is the business day prior, which is Friday the 12th this year. Expenses are to be reported in the month in which they occur and not when they are invoiced or paid. And for contract rates, we will only reimburse for actual hours worked. Administrative overhead is unallowable, as I mentioned previously. The documentation is key. Documentation reimbursement cannot be made until the required documentation has been reviewed and approved by the Crime Commission. Documentation will need to be presented with a clear accounting trail so that the expenses can be clearly tracked in order that the reimbursement process goes smoothly. Some of you have seen when that doesn't happen, if I have to reach back out for something, and then we have to email back and forth and get everything kind of updated, it always takes a little longer than if it's just there in the first place. All agency must scan required documentation and attach it to the appropriate transaction in AmpliFund. So that risk assessment, or the operational assessment tool, the purpose of this is to assist the grant staff in effectively monitoring risks associated with the Nebraska Crime Commission grants, adherence to the grantor's guidelines and agreements, budget adherence, and assurance of proper internal controls being in place. The risk level is determined by a score calculated on the assessment. And then I've listed some examples of what the calculated questions are. So it may be agency experience, total funding amount, financial reporting experience, the obligation history, budget modification, grant complexity, critical contingencies, or other relevant factors. Some of these are controllable within you as the grantee, and some of them are not. They're a little more consistent from year to year. Total amount funded, you can't really do anything about that. Financial reporting, you can. So I go through and I score each category on the risk assessment form, and then the scores are added up and they determine the grantee's level of risk, high, medium, or low. So high risk is level 3, medium risk is level 2, and low risk is level 1. And depending on your risk level, it determines how much documentation you have to attach for payment requests, and then it also determines how often I will complete a monitor on your grant. So for high risk, level 3, this requires 100% documentation for county and subaward travel, operating expenses, and contract payments. For medium risk, level 2, this requires 100% documentation of county and subaward travel and operating expense. And then low risk, level 1, requires no documentation for reimbursement. For the frequency of monitors, level 3 is 2 quarters per year, level 2 is 1 quarter per year, and level 1 is 1 quarter every 2 years. And there's a change this year in how I'm monitoring. So this year, starting with the 2023 grant, it's going to take place in AmpliFund, and I'll have you attach documentation there. So previously, I was going back and monitoring grants that were not electronic, but were still on the paper cash request, if you remember. And so I had to have you send me all the documentation because we didn't have it attached anywhere. After completing or almost completing, some of you are still waiting on my letter of findings for a few here at the end. But going forward though, everything's going to be attached in AmpliFund because starting in 2019, we have moved to, well, it was Grant Vantage previously, but starting with the 2019 grant, everything would have been electronic. So it's easier to just start at the current, monitor in real time, and have everybody attach everything required in AmpliFund. The exception to that is I'm still sending out, I have a questionnaire that I send out to the lead, and I will still have that emailed out to you and have you send that to me and not attach it in AmpliFund. I'll have you still email that to me so that I can review it. I didn't want to get into a lot of AmpliFund training on this grant management training, just because I think everyone has such specific questions. I didn't want to take up everyone's time with that, but there is one thing that I think comes up more than anything else. So I did want to clarify, in AmpliFund, every grant has, in the beginning, has one OA, the organizational admin. The way that we've decided to determine that is we just have it, whoever is named as the lead on your grant is going to have the OA in AmpliFund. That person can then add other users. We at the Crime Commission cannot. In fact, I can't even see your additional users that you add or remove in AmpliFund. That is 100% the OA responsibility for the management of AmpliFund, your AmpliFund account. We did find out that we can't have more than one OA. So we do have a couple examples of people out on sick or medical leave, excuse me. And so they have added an additional person as an additional OA in AmpliFund for the time being, and that is allowable. So if you need that, just let me know. But other than that, if you want additional users in AmpliFund to help with the financial management of the grant, you will have to go through AmpliFund and have those added. If you have any questions about that, definitely let me know. And I did see, I think that there was one question from Randy. So I'll put this up. Here is our contact information. This is our team, Amy, Aaron, Chris, and I, with our emails. We're available all the time for questions and to help you with any of these processes. And I think with that, I will probably just open it up to questions. So Randy, if you had one and you want to start. I'm sorry, Randy, what was your question?
I'm working on a response to Randy. I don't think he can talk. He has to type his question.
Oh, okay.
So I'm typing a response to Randy's question. If anyone else has questions, just start typing them in the chat.
All right, if no one has any questions.
Pine put a question in about needing JCMS certificates. You can send those to either myself, Aaron, or Chris Carlisle. Both of us do the certificates. Just we need to get a JCMS certificate. We need a first name, last name, and valid email address, and then which program they will be reporting for. One other question that popped in is, will we receive a copy of the PowerPoint? Yes, we can send that out.
I'm just getting the attendance, and I actually need the Sarahs to let me know what the last names are so I can get you accurately marked for attendance today.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're gonna end the grant management training here. And if you have anything come up, just please reach out to us. Thanks for attending.